For 8 years, the boy touched his ear. Every doctor said the same thing. Nothing we can do. His father spent millions, flew across the world, begged specialists to look again. They all shrugged. Then a maid noticed something no one else did. And what she found inside that child's ear will leave you speechless. Imagine a billionaire's desperate search for a miracle, only to find it in the hands of a simple maid. Stick around, because this true story will shock you to your core. Oliver Hart was a billionaire. Private jets, mansions, more money than most people see in 10 lifetimes. But his son Shah was born deaf. 8 years old, never heard a sound. Oliver tried everything. Johns Hopkins, Switzerland, Tokyo. Specialists who charged thousands per hour. They ran tests, scans, procedures. All of them said the same thing. Irreversible. Accept it. But Oliver couldn't accept it, because Shah was all he had left. His wife died giving birth to that boy. So Oliver kept searching, kept spending, kept begging God for an answer. What he didn't know, the answer wasn't coming from a hospital. It was coming from the woman he just hired to clean his floors. Victoria was a maid. 27. No degree, no credentials, just a woman trying to pay her grandmother's nursing home bills. But she noticed something about Shah that every specialist had missed. Something in his ear, something dark. And one evening while Oliver was away, she made a decision that would either save that boy's life or destroy her own. What happened next? I need you to see it for yourself. Before we continue, hit subscribe, like this video, and tell me in the comments where in the world you're watching from. I believe this story found you today for a reason. The Hart mansion stretched across 40 acres of Connecticut land. From the outside, it looked like a dream. Georgian columns, windows that sparkled in the sunlight, gardens trimmed to perfection. But inside, silence. Not the peaceful kind. Not the kind that feels like rest. This silence was heavy, thick, like something had died and no one had buried it yet. Servants moved through the hallways without speaking. Their footsteps were soft, careful. They'd learned quickly. Mr. Hart liked things quiet. No music played in that house, no television noise, no laughter bouncing off the walls. Just silence. And somewhere in that silence, a father was drowning. Oliver Hart sat in his study most evenings, staring at the family portrait above the fireplace. There she was, Catherine, his wife, her smile frozen in oil paint, her eyes still bright, still alive. Next to her, a younger version of himself, looking hopeful, looking whole. And between them, Shah, 3 years old in the portrait. Before Oliver understood that his son would never hear his mother's name. Catherine died the day Shah was born. Complications, the doctors called it. Too much bleeding, too little time. Oliver held her hand while the light left her eyes. She'd been trying to say something. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Just like their son. Oliver never forgave himself. If he'd chosen a different hospital, if he'd demanded better care, if he'd been paying closer attention, maybe she'd still be here. Maybe Shah would be different. The guilt sat on his chest like a stone he couldn't lift. So he did the only thing he knew how to do. He spent money, millions of dollars, the best specialists on earth, flights across oceans, hotels that cost more per night than most people earned in a month. Every doctor said the same thing. Your son's deafness is from birth. There's nothing we can do. You need to accept this. Accept it. How could he accept that his boy would live in silence forever? How could he accept that Shah would never hear his father say, "I'm sorry your mother isn't here"? So Oliver kept searching, kept writing checks, kept hoping that somewhere out there, someone had the answer. He didn't realize the answer wasn't coming from a specialist. It was coming from someone he'd never think to look at twice. Someone who was about to walk through his front door with nothing but faith in her heart, and bills she couldn't pay. Her name was Victoria, and she was about to change everything. Victoria dear arrived on a Tuesday morning in October. The sky was gray, the kind of gray that makes everything feel heavier than it should. She stood at the gate of the Hart estate, clutching her bag with both hands, trying to steady her breathing. This was it, her last chance. Back in Newark, Her grandmother was lying in a nursing home bed. The bills were piling up on Victoria's kitchen table like a tower she couldn't stop from growing. 3 months behind. That's what the letter said. If she didn't pay, they'd transfer her grandmother to a state facility. The kind of place where people were forgotten, where no one held your hand, where you became a number instead of a name. Victoria couldn't let that happen. Her grandmother had raised her, took her in after her parents died in a car accident when Victoria was 11, fed her when there was nothing in the fridge, prayed over her when life felt impossible. That woman deserved better than a cold room and strangers who didn't care. So Victoria took this job, maid at a billionaire's mansion. She didn't care about the fancy address. Didn't care about the wealthy family. She just needed the paycheck. The head housekeeper, Mrs. Patterson, met her at the door. Stern face, sharp eyes, the kind of woman who noticed everything and forgave nothing. "You're Victoria." "Yes, ma'am." "You'll clean. You'll stay quiet. You'll keep to yourself." Mr. Hart doesn't like disruptions, especially around his son. Victoria nodded. "I understand." "Do you?" Because the last girl didn't. She tried to get too friendly with the boy. Thought she could help. She was gone within a week. Victoria swallowed. "I'm just here to work, ma'am." Mrs. Patterson studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Good. Follow me." As they walked through the mansion, Victoria kept her eyes down, but she couldn't help noticing things. The silence so thick it felt alive. The way the other servants moved without speaking, without smiling. The heaviness that hung in the air like fog that wouldn't lift. And then she saw him. A small boy sitting on the marble staircase, arranging toy cars in a perfect line. He didn't look up, didn't acknowledge anyone. His shoulders were hunched, his movements careful, precise. But what caught Victoria's attention was something else. The way he kept touching his right ear, just briefly, almost like a habit, and the tiny wince that crossed his face each time he did. Victoria's chest tightened. She'd seen that look before. She didn't say anything, just kept walking. But her heart whispered something she couldn't ignore. Pay attention. Days passed. Victoria cleaned floors, wiped windows, folded linens. She kept her head down like Mrs. Patterson told her, but she couldn't stop watching Shah. Every morning, same routine. The boy would sit alone in the sunroom, surrounded by model airplanes and puzzle pieces. His world was small, contained, safe. No one bothered him there. The other servants avoided him, not out of cruelty, out of fear. Like his silence was something they might catch. Some whispered that the boy was cursed, that losing his mother at birth had taken his hearing with her. Superstition, that's what it was. But Victoria saw something different. She saw a child who was desperately lonely. A boy who sat by windows and pressed his small hand against the glass, watching the world move without him. She saw the way he'd look at his father sometimes when Oliver walked past without stopping, and how his little shoulders would sink just a bit lower. She saw how he touched his ear over and over, wincing each time, and no one noticed. Or maybe they'd stopped noticing long ago. One afternoon, Victoria was dusting the hallway near the sunroom when she saw Shah struggling with a model airplane wing. His small fingers couldn't get the piece to fit. Frustration creased his face. She shouldn't interfere. Mrs. Patterson's warning echoed in her mind. But before she could stop herself, Victoria knelt down and gently took the wing. She fitted it into place with a soft click. Shah looked up at her. For a moment, they just stared at each other. Then something happened. The tiniest smile, just a flicker at the corner of his mouth. Victoria's heart cracked wide open. She smiled back, gave him a small wave. He waved in return. That night, Victoria lay in her bed thinking about that wave. Such a small thing, but it meant everything. The next morning, she left something on the stairs where Shah always sat. A folded paper bird, simple, made from scrap paper she'd found in the kitchen. She didn't wait to see if he'd take it. But the following day, the bird was gone. In its place, a note. 2 words in shaky handwriting. "Thank you?" Victoria pressed that note to her chest and closed her eyes. She whispered into the quiet, Lord, let me help this child. Show me how. She didn't know it yet, but God was already answering. And the answer would cost her everything she had. Over the next few weeks, something shifted. Victoria and Shah developed their own language. Small things, secret things. She'd leave him candy wrapped in gold foil. He'd leave her drawings of airplanes. She learned his signs, not the formal ones his tutors taught, but the personal ones he'd made up himself. The way he tapped his chest twice meant he was happy. The way he pointed to the sky meant he was thinking about stars. The way he pressed both palms together meant he felt safe, and slowly he started using that last sign around her. Safe. Victoria treasured that more than anything. But not everyone was pleased. One evening, Mrs. Patterson cornered her in the kitchen. "I've seen you with the boy." Victoria's stomach dropped. "Ma'am, I don't." Mrs. Patterson's voice was sharp as glass. "I warned you. Mr. Hart has rules. Staff doesn't get close to Shah. I'm not trying to cause trouble. He's just lonely. That's not your concern." Mrs. Patterson stepped closer. "You're here to clean, not to mother that child, not to fix what can't be fixed." Victoria bit her tongue. Fix what can't be fixed. That's what everyone said. Even here, even in this house where the boy lived, they'd all given up. "If Mr. Hart finds out you've been interfering, you'll be gone. No references, no second chances." Mrs. Patterson's eyes were cold. "Think about that." She walked away, heels clicking against the floor like a countdown. That night, Victoria sat on her bed, staring at the wall. She thought about her grandmother, the bills, the paycheck she desperately needed. She thought about Shah, his lonely eyes, his pain. She thought about the dark thing she'd seen in his ear. Mrs. Patterson's words echoed in her mind. Fix what can't be fixed. But what if it could be fixed? What if everyone was wrong? Victoria picked up her Bible and held it close. "Lord, I don't know what to do. I can't lose this job, but I can't ignore what I'm seeing." She waited in the silence. No answer came. Just the weight of a decision she wasn't ready to make. Outside her window, the moon hung low and heavy. Inside her heart, a war was beginning. Between what she needed to survive and what she knew was right. She didn't know it yet, but that war was about to end because the next morning everything would change. The next morning came cold and quiet. Victoria was sweeping the hallway when she heard it. A soft thud, then nothing. She stopped, listened. Another sound, like a muffled cry. Her heart jumped. She followed the sound to the garden door. And there was Shah sitting on the stone bench, his small body hunched over, both hands pressed tight against his right ear. His face was twisted, tears streaming down his cheeks, but no sound came from his mouth. He was crying in complete silence. Victoria dropped the broom and ran to him. She knelt in front of him, her hands shaking. "Shah, Shah, look at me." He opened his eyes. Red, wet, full of pain. She gently signed. "Your ear." He nodded, more tears falling. Victoria's chest felt like it was being crushed. "Can I look?" She signed carefully. "I'll be gentle. I promise." He hesitated. Fear flickered across his face. But then he leaned forward. "Trust." This child, who had been poked and prodded by doctors his whole life, trusted her. Victoria swallowed hard. She tilted his head gently toward the morning light and looked. There it was, deep inside his ear canal. Something dark, dense, glistening like wet stone. Her breath stopped. It was bigger than before, clearer. How had every doctor missed this? How had every scan overlooked it? Victoria's mind raced back to Marcus, her cousin, the blockage that had kept him deaf for 6 years. The simple procedure that changed his life. Her hands trembled. "Shah," she signed slowly. "There's something in your ear. Something that shouldn't be there." His eyes went wide. "We need to tell your father," she signed. Panic exploded across his face. His hands moved fast, frantic. "No, no, doctors, please. They hurt me, always hurt, never help." Victoria's heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. She understood. 8 years of specialists, 8 years of procedures, 8 years of pain with no relief. He'd learned that help meant suffering. She took his small hands in hers, looked into his eyes. "I would never hurt you," she whispered. "Never." He stared at her, and slowly his breathing calmed. But the fear didn't leave his eyes. Victoria sat with him until the tears dried, until his hands stopped shaking. Then she walked back inside, her mind spinning. She knew what she'd seen. She knew what it meant. But what could she do? Tell Oliver? He'd call more specialists, the same ones who'd missed it for years. Do nothing? Watch this child suffer in silence? That night Victoria didn't sleep. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, her grandmother's voice echoing in her head. God doesn't always send help in fancy packages. Baby girl, sometimes he sends it through folks with nothing but willing hands. Victoria closed her eyes. Her hands were willing. But was she brave enough to use them? 3 days passed. Victoria couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, could barely think. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw it. That dark mass lodged deep, blocking everything. And Shah's face, the pain, the silent tears. On the third night, she sat on the edge of her bed, Bible open in her lap. But the words blurred. All she could see was Marcus, her cousin, deaf for 6 years, written off by every doctor, until someone finally looked. One procedure, one moment of attention, and his world exploded into sound. Victoria's hands wouldn't stop shaking. She knew what she'd seen in Shah's ear. She knew. But who was she? A maid. No degree, no training, no right to touch that boy. If she was wrong, if she hurt him, she'd go to prison. If she was right, but Oliver found out she'd acted without permission, she'd lose everything. Her job, her income, her grandmother's care. Lord, she whispered, voice cracking. What do you want from me? Silence, just the ticking of the clock. She thought about her brother, Daniel, dead at 14. He'd been sick for months, complaining of pain, but they couldn't afford doctors, couldn't afford help. Victoria watched him fade, watched him struggle to breathe, watched him try to speak words that wouldn't come. He died in her arms, silent, just like Shah's world. She'd promised herself that day. Promised God never again. She'd never stand by while a child suffered. But this was different. This wasn't her brother. This was a billionaire's son. And she was nobody. Victoria closed the Bible, stood up, walked to the window. The moon hung heavy outside, spilling silver light across the gardens. Somewhere in this mansion, a little boy was sleeping with pain in his ear and silence in his world. And she was the only one who noticed, the only one who'd seen. God, she breathed. I'm scared. I'm so scared. But if this is what you're asking, her voice trailed off. She thought of her grandmother's words. The Lord doesn't call the equipped child. He equips the called. Victoria wiped her eyes, made a decision. Tomorrow, if Shah showed pain again, she would act. She would trust what God had shown her, even if it cost her everything. She climbed into bed, heart pounding. Sleep wouldn't come. But peace did. A strange, heavy peace, the kind that comes when you've decided to step off the cliff and trust that God will catch you. Tomorrow was coming, and with it, the moment that would change everything. The next evening came too quickly. Oliver was away on business. The house was quiet. Victoria was folding linens in the hallway when she heard it. A thump. Her heart stopped. She ran toward the sound. Shah lay on the hallway floor, curled up, both hands pressed to his ear, face contorted in agony. Tears streamed down his cheeks. Silent tears. Victoria dropped to her knees beside him. I'm here, baby. I'm here. She cradled his head gently, tilting it toward the lamplight. The dark mass was clearly visible now, swollen, pressing against his ear canal. Her hands trembled. This was it, the moment. She reached into her pocket, pulled out the sterilized tweezers she'd taken from the first aid kit 3 days ago, just in case. Her breath came in short bursts. Lord, she whispered. Guide my hands, please. Shah looked up at her, eyes wide, scared, but trusting. I won't hurt you, she signed with one hand. I promise. He nodded slowly. Victoria steadied herself, took a breath, and gently, carefully moved the tweezers into his ear canal. Her hand shook. She could feel it, the dark mass, dense and sticky. She hooked it gently, pulled. Resistance, her heart hammered. She pulled again, slow, careful, and then release. Something slid free. It landed in her palm. Dark, wet, biological, years of build-up that had stolen his hearing. Victoria stared at it. Her stomach turned, but before she could react, Shah gasped. A real gasp, audible, loud. His hand flew to his ear. His eyes went wide. Wider than she'd ever seen them. He sat up suddenly, looking around the hallway like he'd never seen it before. Then he pointed at the grandfather clock on the wall. The one that had been ticking his whole life. The one he'd never heard. His mouth opened. A sound came out. Rough, broken, unpracticed, but real. Tick, he whispered. Victoria's tears fell. Yes, baby. That's the clock. You can hear it. Shah's whole body trembled. He touched his throat, felt the vibration of his own voice. His eyes filled with wonder and fear and something else. Hope. His mouth opened again. One word. The first real word he'd ever spoken. Dad? Victoria sobbed. She pulled him close, holding him as he shook as sounds flooded his world for the first time in 8 years. You can hear, she whispered into his hair. Thank you, Jesus. You can hear. Shah clung to her. And then, footsteps heavy, fast, coming down the hallway. Victoria looked up. Oliver Hart stood in the doorway, face white as death, eyes locked on his son on the floor, and the blood on Victoria's hands. What have you done? Oliver's voice shook the walls. He rushed forward, pushing Victoria aside, grabbing Shah by the shoulders. What did she do to you? Shah flinched at the sound. So loud, so sharp. But then his mouth opened. Dad, I can hear you. Oliver froze. His entire body went rigid. What? Shah reached up and touched his father's face. Your voice? He whispered. Is that your voice? Oliver's legs buckled. But before the moment could breathe, before he could understand what was happening, his eyes landed on Victoria's hands. The blood, the tweezers, the dark mass sitting in her palm. Terror overtook wonder. Security, he bellowed. Now. 2 guards appeared instantly. Get her away from my son. Victoria's heart shattered. Sir, please listen to me. I didn't hurt him. I helped him. Look. She held out her palm, showing him the blockage. This was inside his ear. This is why he couldn't hear. I removed it. You're not a doctor. Oliver roared. You could have killed him. The guards grabbed Victoria's arms. Shah screamed. Actually screamed. No, don't take her. The sound of his son's voice, loud, desperate, real, stopped Oliver cold. But the fear was too strong. Take her to the security office. Call the police. Victoria didn't resist. As they dragged her away, she looked back at Shah. It's okay, she mouthed. You're going to be okay. Shah sobbed. Loud, messy sobs. The first sounds of grief he'd ever made. At the hospital, doctors swarmed around Shah. Tests, scans, examinations. Oliver paced the hallway, his mind spinning. His son was speaking, hearing, responding to sounds. It was impossible. A nurse approached him. Mr. Hart, the doctor needs to speak with you urgently. Oliver followed her into a small office. Dr. Matthews sat behind the desk, face grim. Mr. Hart, I don't know how to say this. Just say it. The doctor slid a folder across the desk. This is your son's scan from 3 years ago. Oliver opened it. There, circled in red, was a notation. Dense obstruction noted in right ear canal. Recommend immediate removal. Oliver's blood turned to ice. Someone saw this? Dr. Matthews nodded slowly. It appears so, but there's no follow-up, no procedure scheduled. Your account was flagged for ongoing treatment protocol. The words hit Oliver like a bullet. Ongoing treatment protocol. They'd known. They'd seen the blockage and they'd left it there because his money was too good. Because his desperation was profitable. They kept my son deaf, Oliver whispered. On purpose. Dr. Matthews said nothing. But his silence said everything. Oliver's hands trembled. All those years, all those millions, all those specialists shaking their heads. They'd lied? And the one person who told the truth, who'd actually helped, was sitting in his security office waiting to be arrested. Oliver stood. Where are you going? The doctor asked. Oliver didn't answer. He had a maid to find and a lifetime of apologies to make. Victoria sat alone in the security office, hands folded, head bowed. She wasn't praying for herself. She was praying for Shah, that his hearing would hold, that his father would understand, that the boy would finally know what it felt like to live in a world full of sound. The door opened. She looked up. Oliver Hart stood there. But he wasn't the same man who dragged her away an hour ago. His eyes were red, his face broken. He looked like a man who just watched his whole world crumble and rebuild in the same breath. Victoria, her name spoken softly, almost reverently. She stood. Mr. Hart, I can explain. Don't. He walked toward her slowly. Don't explain. Don't apologize. Don't say a word. He stopped in front of her. And this billionaire, this man who controlled empires, fell to his knees. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry. Victoria's breath caught. The doctors knew, Oliver said, voice cracking. They saw the blockage years ago. They left it there because my money was too good to cure. Tears streamed down his face. I trusted them. I trusted credentials and degrees and expensive hospitals. I threw millions at my son's problem and never once stopped to actually look at him. He looked up at her. But you did. You saw him. You saw his pain. You paid attention when no one else bothered. Victoria's own tears fell. I just loved him, sir. That's all. Oliver shook his head. No, that's everything. He stood slowly. I've spent 8 years trying to buy a miracle, and God sent one through the woman I hired to clean my floors. Victoria wiped her eyes. God uses the willing, Mr. Hart. That's what my grandmother always said. Oliver nodded. She was right. They walked back to Shah's hospital room together. The boy sat on the bed, headphones on, listening to music for the first time. His face was pure wonder. When he saw them, he pulled off the headphones and ran straight to Victoria. He wrapped his arms around her waist. Thank you, he said. His voice was rough, unpracticed, beautiful. Victoria knelt down and held him tight. You were always worth hearing, baby. Always. Shah pulled back and looked at his father. Dad, I can hear your heart. It's beating fast. Oliver dropped to his knees and pulled his son close. For the first time in 8 years, Shah heard his father cry. And Victoria, standing quietly beside them, finally let herself breathe. God had answered her prayer. Not with money, not with medicine, but with willing hands and a faithful heart. Sometimes that's all a miracle needs.